What is up, everybody? Welcome to Guys and Bets. Yes, it is the first show in this new quarantined, shut-in world, and it is honestly a pleasure to be back. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. So thank you all so much for joining us. Yeah, so this week, of course, 2020 NFL Draft. I cannot think of a more highly anticipated draft in my life, not just because of what's gone on in the sports world, but what's gone on in the world here. Sports have been postponed for about a month now, I think. I don't even know what day it is. I think it's March 2nd today. I don't know, but I can't wait for this draft. So today we've got picks for Thursday's draft. And I couldn't do this show alone, of course, so I had to enlist the help of my partner, the great Joe Osborne, broadcasting from his basement, I can only assume. Joe, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, man. Much different world we're living in here, but trying to make the best of it. Like a lot of you guys out there, catching up on a lot of TV series, movies, video games. I still haven't given in to the temptation of pornography yet, despite all of the recommendations coming in from Ian. But you know what? Making the best of it. And I see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. And sports will be back in June, is my prediction.
Yeah, I agree. I've been optimistic during this whole time as well. But you mentioned you've been watching TV and catching up on some series. Any recommendations out there, Joe?
It's a lot of the same stuff that everyone's been watching. Ozark, of course, great season 3. Tiger King was hilarious. People who watch us know that used to be a bit of a wrestling nerd growing up. There's a documentary series out right now called Dark Side of the Ring. It's Montreal Screwjob, Chris Benoit, stuff like that. I highly recommend checking that out. Very entertaining watch if you were even a mild wrestling fan growing up.
Now, Joe, you are, of course, Guys and Bets Nation is fully aware that you are a fan of the Miami Dolphins, and I understand you've brought to the broadcast with us some very, very rare, very, very expensive pieces of Miami Dolphins memorabilia.
Yes, I have a Miami Dolphins blanket here, which my beautiful wife and I have spent many an evening snuggling under. And no, Ian, I will not go into further detail on that. Guys and Bets is a family program. And I also have a Guys and Bets a Dolphins mouse pad here. You don't see mouse pads around very often. A bit of a lost art, I must say. So, a bit of something I'm very proud of.
Well, you alluded to them already, Joe, but of course, Guys and Bets wouldn't be complete without the third member of the three amigos, as it were. Let's go to Ian McMillan. Ian, how's it going?
It's going, you know what, it's actually going great. We did a little bit of a rehearsal yesterday, and you saw I had a disgusting facial hair, my quarantine beard going, but I've completely shaved it off. I'm a freshman. I'm optimistic. The NFL draft is back this week. I missed you guys. I missed talking to human beings. This is the first time in a while that I haven't just talked to my cat all day, so I'm happy. I'm in a good mood. I'm ready for the NFL draft, and I'm excited to give out some picks.
Yeah, during rehearsal yesterday, and this isn't hyperbole, but Ian sort of looked like Charles Manson, and I was starting to get worried. Long hair, scraggly beard. It's good to see clean shaven. Speaking of your cat, how is Daisy?
She's doing pretty well. She was sleeping beneath my feet, but she's a little bit camera shy. So right before we went live, she ran off, I think, to my bedroom. But she's doing well. She's a little annoyed at me, but that's all right.
And what have you been doing to pass the time?
I mean, it's the same thing as a lot of people. Video games, a lot of betting on Madden Sims as well. I've been betting on those to help get my sports betting fix. But yeah, I mean, nothing really. A lot of just staring at the wall.
Did you get Call of Duty sorted out?
No, I didn't. So if anyone's a computer expert, I have a computer that's way good enough to run Call of Duty Warzone, but it doesn't work for me. It's too laggy and stuttering and stuff like that. So message me on Twitter if you have a fix for that.
Yeah, reach out to Ian about this issue. It's very weird. We'd like to get him in the regiment in Call of Duty. So yeah, we've got 2 picks apiece here for the upcoming draft. And if you feel strongly about anything, about a bet that you've got lined up already, something you're interested in, drop it in the chat there. And per usual on a Guys and Bets broadcast, Ian we'll be keeping an eye on that and choosing some questions and or comments to read at the bottom of the show. So let's get right into it. We've been sort of putting this show together since the end of last week. So we've been setting the board here. Let's start with Joe. Joe, you've got a couple of picks that you're in love with. Get us started. What's the first one that jumps out at you for the 2020 NFL Draft?
My favorite pick for the 2020 NFL Draft, they have odds up for the second quarterback off the board, and I like Tua Tagovailoa coming in at minus 105. Now, guys, you got to shop around for these NFL Draft props. Minus 105 for Tua going second. That's over at Bovada. At BetOnline, he's minus 160, so make sure you're shopping around. So let's get right into this pick. Tua, second quarterback off the board, minus 105. Even before he fully recovered from his dislocated hip injury, most had Tua as a second QB off the board and likely going fifth to the Dolphins. Now, all of a sudden, mock drafters have him falling in the draft, with many talking themselves into Justin Herbert going ahead of him, and I am not buying it. Either Tua or Herbert will be the second QB off the board, and talent-wise, I don't think it's close. Tua has a better release, is more accurate, and moves around better in the pocket. I keep hearing about Herbert's big arm, yet in the 2 seasons since his sophomore season, he's posted both a lower completion percentage and fewer yards per attempt. What's up with that? Tua, on the other hand, has improved every season he's played. Tua has also built a reputation on being a big game player, starting in his freshman year when he came in at halftime, down by 13 in the national championship game, leading Alabama to a W. Very Tom Brady-esque, I must say. It's a small sample size, but look at his numbers versus ranked teams this past season. Then look at Herbert's. It's not even close. So here's the bottom line. If you want a guy who's like Ryan Tannehill, go ahead. Take Herbert. Very poor value in the top 10, in my opinion. But if you want a guy who has the potential to be Russell Wilson or Drew Brees, take a risk and take Tua. I love him at this spot. Second QB off the board, minus 105.
Well, talk to me about this, Joe. We sit close by at Oddshark headquarters, and we've been talking about everything, but specifically we've been talking about the NFL Draft for a long time because, as we all know, the Miami Dolphins were going to have a high pick, and you've been talking about potentially the idea of Tua getting picked by the Fish and moving forward from there. But talk to me about this now. Put yourself in Thursday night, when the Dolphins are on the clock and it comes time to announce the pick. What if it is Justin Herbert in that spot? What will your reaction be?
I won't be happy, especially if they pick him above Tua, for the simple reason that I think Josh Rosen might be better than Herbert. He's their backup quarterback right now. You know, this is a guy who's still younger than the person who's going to be picked number one on Thursday night, Burrow. And I don't think it needs to be a situation for the Dolphins where it's quarterback or nothing at all. If they don't like Tua, okay, I'm going to trust the process. These guys know more than I do, right? But there's still a lot of needs on this team. They weren't awful last year simply because they didn't have a quarterback. Their offensive line needs help. They still need help at the skilled positions. They still need help on defense despite all the spending they did in free agency. So I won't be happy. I think that Tua's ceiling is much, much higher, maybe even higher than Joe Burrow. Of course, there are the injury concerns, but Miami is a team that can take the risk because they have capable quarterbacks right now. Not great, but average guys maybe. And they have 2 other picks in the first round. So Miami can take a risk. I think Tua is the guy. I would love to see it, and I won't be happy if they pick Herbert ahead of him.
Now, Ian, I got to go over to you because you just made a face when Joe said that Tua has a higher ceiling potentially than Burrow. Care to address that?
I'm all in on Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is going to be. I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think there is no ceiling for Joe Burrow. I'm 100% all in on him. So I don't know about saying Tua has a higher ceiling. Well, I guess we'll see.
Well, let's get us started here with the first of your 2 picks, Ian. And what are you looking at here? What are you going to talk about for the folks at home here?
Yeah, so if you guys know me at all, then you know that I like plus money picks. So both of mine are going to be plus money because if I'm going to bet on the NFL draft, I'm at least going to get some value out of it. So the very first one's going to be plus 120. It's for over 15.5 SEC players to be drafted in the first round. So from all indications, it seems to me that there are 14 SEC players that are a lock to go in the first round. So there's 4 LSU players, 6 from Alabama, and then Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and Auburn each have 1. Now, obviously, this is based off of mock drafts from experts, quote unquote. So who knows, but that's all we have to go off of because unfortunately OddsShark didn't get the invite to the Combine this year, and I personally don't have any phone numbers of any GMs. So I have to go based off these experts, and based off of that, we only need 2 players who are projected to go in the early part of the second round to sneak into the late portion of the first round. And obviously with this draft, it's an extremely unique situation. So we have to kind of guess from our end how the front offices of NFL teams are going to handle it. One of the big changes is that the large majority of college pro days were obviously canceled. I think that because they haven't been able to get as close of a look at these players as they would in a normal year, things like pedigree are going to be valued a little bit more than they would in a normal draft year. Obviously, there's no conference in the country in college football that has as good of a pedigree as the SEC. So I'm hoping that SEC players will be valued just a little bit more than they would in a normal year. Now, finally, one of the key players that I think will need to be selected in the first round for this over to hit is Georgia running back DeAndre Swift. I did not include him in the 14 players that I think are locked to go in the first round, but there are some teams that pick late in the first round that could use a running back. Those teams are the Dolphins at 26, Seahawks at 27, and of course, the most likely landing spot for Swift, in my opinion, is the Chiefs at 32, the last pick in the first round. So if DeAndre Swift does end up being selected in the first round of the draft, I think we have a very good chance of cashing this bet. So give me plus 120 over 15.5 SEC players to be drafted in the first round.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of this is going to hinge on Swift there, the running back out of Georgia, potential late round first, early second rounder. So that one is going to be an interesting bet. Obviously, a pretty sharp number there. But speaking of Georgia, Ian, we know you are a fan of the Atlanta Falcons. What do you hope the Falcons do in round 1 there in the NFL draft?
Yeah, so they obviously have to go defense. They have to go defensive back or pass rusher. A lot of rumors, if anyone's seen, that they might move up in the draft. I think if they stay where they're at, I think Xavier McKinney, the safety from Alabama, would be the smart choice. But I mean, the Falcons are kind of known for moving up in the first round. Obviously, everyone remembers when they moved up a bunch of spots to get Julio Jones back there a number of years ago. And apparently the Redskins are fielding offers for their number 2 pick. So maybe even, I mean, that would be a pretty big stretch, but they might even move all the way up there and take Chase Young, or maybe even trade with the Lions, get Jeffrey Okudah. But I think if they do move up, I think the smarter move would be not move up quite as high and get CJ Henderson, the corner from Florida, who I think is the consensus number 2 corner behind Okudah in the draft. So I hope the Falcons do move up. I'd like to see them get CJ Henderson, if not Okudah.
All right, over to the Big Ten for my first pick here. And this is one, when we started putting the show together late last week, had a bit of value attached to it. Now, as we sit here on Tuesday, not so much. The value on this one has evaporated very, very quickly. It's around Tristan Wirfs, draft position, 8.5. I'm going to take under, but now it's minus 220. But here's why. There's been a little hype around Wirfs because his combine was really, really good. 4.85 40-yard dash, 36.5-inch vertical, broad jump, all of these pretty insane numbers for an offensive lineman, and by all accounts was the, quote, best O-lineman at the whole combine. Hence, we now have a bit of buzz for the former Hawkeye entering the draft. So a bunch of mocks, not all certainly, but a bunch, have 2 teams drafting O-linemen inside the top 8. There's a chance the Giants draft Wirfs at number 4, but the real shot here, especially with this bet, is with Arizona at number 8. Both offensive lines in New York and Arizona are not good. They could really use help at the tackle position. Both Daniel Jones and Kyler Murray need a lot of help. No quarterback fumbled more than Jones, and Murray was tied for 3rd among quarterbacks sacked the most with 48. And of course, the odds moves is reinforcing this. This was minus 160 on Thursday, minus 170 on Friday, and it was minus 180 yesterday. Now it's all the way to minus 220. So there's been some significant movement with this one leading up to draft day. Wirfs is plus 115 to be the first O-lineman selected in the draft, but it's Jedrick Wills that's the favorite at minus 110. So just to play it safe, I've already locked this in, but I'll go inside the top 8 for Iowa's Tristan Wirfs. An absolute beast, and they crank out good pros from Iowa. All right, Joe, over to your second pick here for the 2020 NFL Draft. Give us number 2 here. What's your bet?
Number 2, I'm going with the third pick overall in the draft. I like the chalk pick at most places. Jeffrey Okudah coming in at plus 130. Guys, this is another shop around spot. This is at plus 130 at Bet Online right now. A lot of other spots. He's right around even. So like I said, shop around. Okay, so let's get into this. The Lions have an immediate need at quarterback after they traded Darius Slay to the Eagles. Yes, they added Desmond Trufant, but he doesn't have the ability to change a game like Okudah, who's easily the top cornerback in the draft. The Lions ranked dead last in passing yards allowed last season. And if Matt Patricia wants to keep his job, his priority should be to improve the team's greatest weakness. Now, there's been rumblings about the Lions trading out of this spot, but I think it's unlikely that they'll be able to find a trade partner. At this point, I think all the speculation around Tua might scare some teams off from giving up too much draft assets, and I don't think another player warrants trading up for. Another big consideration is that by most accounts, Okudah had an excellent showcase at the Combine, considering the unusual circumstances of this year's draft, where teams won't get nearly the same amount of access with draftees that they're accustomed to. Those Combine results are probably a bigger factor than in years past. All this considered, Okudah going third overall looks like a safe play in the 2020 NFL Draft.
Now, you mentioned Matt Patricia there earlier. I just want to point out the fact that it looks like potentially you're channeling your inner Matt Patricia, Joe. You've got the hat on backwards, and I see you there putting a pencil behind your ear.
Yeah, don't even get me started on this clown, Matt Patricia. You know, he's a total turncoat on the backwards hat community. When he had the most success in his career on the New England Patriots sideline, you would often see him with his hat on backwards. Then he becomes a head coach, and he goes from a blue-collar guy to a white-collar guy, flips the hat around. So I want nothing to do with Patricia. He's not going to have a job next season, certainly not as a head coach anywhere.
I had no idea that there was a backwards hat community. It's good to know. All right, Ian, over to you for your second pick. And if I'm not mistaken, this one centers around one of the deepest positions in the 2020 draft. What do you got?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And another plus money pick. This one's a little bit even more value. It's at plus 165, and you nailed it. It is about a receiver because this is a very deep draft for the wide receiver position. I'm going to take T. Higgins, the Clemson receiver, under 32.5. So obviously 32 picks in a round. So this is just basically he needs to get selected in the first round of the NFL draft. So, I mean, I just mentioned it. Obviously, this draft class is loaded with wide receiver talent. And there are a number of teams that I could see taking a wide receiver with their first round pick. Jets, Raiders, 49ers, Broncos, Dolphins, Eagles, Vikings, Packers, and Chiefs are all teams that I could see going with a wide receiver in the first round. Now, it's pretty clear that Huggs, Judy, and Lamb will be the first 3 wideouts taken. But after that, Higgins could easily slide in there as the 4th one selected in the first round. Now, I mentioned it when I gave out my last pick. I think teams are going to value pedigree more than they would in a normal draft during this year's draft. And no school in the country has a better pedigree for wide receivers than Clemson. They really have been wide receiver U. I mean, you got DeAndre Hopkins, you got Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams, Hunter Renfrow, just to name a few of the guys who have come out of Clemson in recent years. So a team knows when they're taking a wide receiver from Clemson, they're going to get a good one. And to be honest, the main reason why I like this pick is the value, plus 165. That's great value. I personally think it's probably around a 50-50% chance that T. Higgins goes in the first round. So being able to get a 50-50 shot at plus 165, in my opinion, is a great value bet. So T. Higgins selected under 32.5 for my second pick for the NFL draft.
Now, another team that could potentially go wide receiver in the first round, not likely, but the chances there, is the Baltimore Ravens, and they're the basis of my second pick here. But I'm going to bank on the Ravens taking a defensive player with their first pick. This was at minus 130 earlier. Now it's minus 160. So it's good, Ian, that you've got the plus money picks, because mine are getting a little pricey here as we approach draft day. Now, Todd McShay specifically addressed this in one of his mocks, and he's bang on. But Baltimore still hasn't replaced C.J. Mosley, who left ahead of the 2019 season. It's really one of the positions, inside linebacker that is, that the Ravens have to address. So I do think they use this pick to sort of fill this void. And there are some good ones. LSU's Patrick Queen, Oklahoma's Kenneth Murray, Wisconsin's Zach Bond, all have been mocked to the Ravens at this spot. And I think any of those would be really good and really fun fits into this Ravens defense. But for me, I would love to see Patrick Queen injected into this defense and help a team that already has pretty high expectations for the upcoming season. Now, there are potentially a couple of other positions that the Ravens may address, like wide receiver, but another need is helping the pass rush, so that would also help with this bet. Penn State's Yetur Gross-Matos or Iowa's AJ Epineza could get looks and could very well be available at this spot as well. But regardless, I think the Ravens go defense with their first pick at the 2020 NFL Draft. 30-cent move here since the time we started putting this show together, now minus 160. So there you go. 6 picks there. 2 from each of us, 2 from Joe, 2 from Ian, 2 from myself. And Ian, you put out a poll this morning, I believe. What did you put out there, and what are the folks saying as a result?
I did. Look at that. Even me, not even being in the office, I'm doing my job for once. So yes, I did put out a poll this morning. I mentioned it earlier with my last pick about the 3 first wide receivers probably that will be taken. So we put out a poll. Which of the 3 do you guys think will be the first wide receiver selected in the NFL draft? So you see the results there. You see Jerry Jeudy is the favorite, 49%. Him and CD Lamb are both minus 110 at Bovada as far as the odds go, but only 41% of people think CD Lamb will be the first wide receiver taken. And then Henry Ruggs, which is not too surprising to me, plus 325 comes in at 10%. My 2 cents on that kind of makes sense. I think it will be Jerry Jeudy, the first wide receiver selected. One thing to keep out for, of course, with Ruggs is his 40 time. I believe he ran a 4.27, which is an insane 40 time. And we know there are NFL GMs out there that value that 40 time more than anything else. If Al Davis was still around, he would probably be trading up to try to get Henry Ruggs before anyone else because, of course, he loved the 40 times. So, yeah, I think it makes sense. Jerry Jeudy probably will be the first one. But I don't know, Ninja, what do you think there?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree there, Ian. My team, the 49ers, certainly one of those teams that will be looking for a wide receiver, and I hope personally that Jerry Jeudy falls into their lap. Now, the gulf between those 3, Jeudy, Lamb, and Ruggs, it's not too vast, but for me, for my money, I think Jeudy is the standout among those 3, and potentially of this very deep, very skilled, very talented wide receiver class that's coming up for the 2020 draft. Joe, what are your thoughts there?
I would actually fade this poll, and I'll go with Lamb. I think this is so razor thin. It's a real virtual coin flip between Lamb and Jeudy as the number 1 receiver, and it's silly, but we know Jeudy did horribly on the Wonderlic. Among the receivers, one of the worst, if not the worst. I don't know off the top of my head. But people laugh at that, but they give the guys the Wonderlic for a reason. And with teams having less access to these guys than years past, that might be the tiebreaker for one of these teams looking for a receiver near the top of the draft there. So I'll go with Lamb.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a good point there, Joe. I believe Jeudy got a 9 out of 50, I want to say. But I'll just remind you that I believe it was another former 49ers legend, Frank Gore, I believe got a 6 out of 50 on the Wonderlic. Look, I get it. I understand why this test is out there. I personally don't put a whole lot of stock into it. But I would hope that a Wonderlic score like that would not have as dramatic an impact on Judy's draft stock.
Yeah, and don't forget former Alabama wide receiver Julio Jones also didn't do well on the Wonderlic, and that hasn't really affected his play in the NFL. So I wouldn't put too much stock in Wonderlic. His
play at all. Yeah, that's a great point there, Ian.
Something about Alabama, eh? The education there. I don't know.
Listen, if you're going to Alabama to play football, you're not going to class. Let's just call a spade a spade. I mean,
whoa!
I feel like that's just a fact. I mean, if you're going to Alabama to play football, you're playing football. These guys don't go to class. It's fine. They don't need to go to class. Go to the NFL and make millions. But it's not surprising Alabama players, in my opinion at least, don't score high on the Wonderlic, and it doesn't even matter.
Well, I believe all 3 of our teams will be in very, very interesting positions in the NFL draft, and I, for one, cannot wait for it. Ian, anything going on in the chat there?
Yeah, just a couple of questions here. Let's tackle this one first from Robert Treitz, Digital Bob, a.k.a. Will the Colts, we know he's a Colts fan, draft a quarterback in the first round? I don't know if he's trying to trick us a little bit or if he's just trying to check to see what we know, but the Colts don't have a first-round draft pick. Obviously, they could trade into the first round. They'd have to probably give up a little bit, but they could take Jordan Love probably there late in the first round as quarterback. But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. Colts, are they going to go quarterback, or are they going to see how long they can ride out Philly Rivers?
I mean, it's not the deepest year for quarterbacks, and there's been a lot of hype about Love, and admittedly, I didn't watch a ton of his games last year. From what I saw, pretty good skill set. Does that translate into a high pick? I don't know. The quarterback class is just a tad underwhelming for me. So I just wonder if the Colts stand pat this time around, address some other needs, and move on from there. I don't know, Joe, what do you think?
Well, Phillip Rivers is completely shot. I mean, the Chargers let him walk for a reason. He's not very good anymore, so they obviously don't have a long-term answer there, but maybe – who knows? No one knows anything about what most of these teams are thinking. Maybe they are in love with Jordan Love, and they could put a package together. They trade into the first round to grab him. But, yeah, they don't have a long-term answer, but they'd have to give up quite a bit to get into the first round. So I think that's very unlikely.
The Bolo tie community does not take kindly to those shots at Phillip Rivers there, Joe.
The Fiend says, long time no see, boys. Hope all is well, and you haven't ran out of quarantine beers yet. Yes, miss all our viewers, but unfortunately I've ran out of quarantine beers multiple times and restocked multiple times. But Ninja, looks like you got at least some quarantine whiskey still left there behind you. Is that what that is, whiskey?
Yeah, I've got some bourbon up there, some Maker's Mark. I don't go hard into that. That's for special occasions, but I have a pretty stocked fridge and a pretty stocked bar right now. I'm doing all right. How about you, Joe?
I actually ran out of beer. I stocked up big time. It was my last day in the office. I think it was about 3 weeks ago on a Wednesday, and I went to the liquor store, and I think I grabbed like 70 cans of beer, something crazy, and a bunch of bottles of wine. So we went through all that, finished all that on Sunday, and I have it timed out. I have a bit of a strategy because they're only allowing 5 people in the liquor store at the same time. So I'm going to go tomorrow afternoon to a liquor store on the outskirts of town and hopefully be able to get right in and out. And I buy in bulk, though. That's what you got to do, Ian.
Yep, that's a smart call, something I have not been doing. Marshall Weiss, decent question here, just because, I mean, obviously betting on the NFL draft is not like betting on normal sports. He has 2 questions, but the first one, how many units are you guys putting on these picks? Are you treating it like you would a normal bet? Are you doing a little bit fewer units? Because, I mean, it is just the NFL draft. It's a little bit harder to handicap than actual sports. So do you guys have a take on that? How many units are you going to put on these picks?
Not really, just standard 1-unit bets for me here. As I sit here right now leading up to the draft, I might, do a bit more research and dig into some other bets and read some more last-minute mocks and see what's going on. And if I feel strongly about something, I might up the units for that. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think it's just good to have something relevant back. The NFL draft, annually, very, very, very big and very popular. But this year, for me personally, there's just something bigger about it. And whether it's the fact that, stay-at-home orders and all this, that, and the other thing, the fact that it's happening is massive for me. I can't wait. I've locked these 2 in already. But moving forward, yeah, maybe, on draft day I see something, put a couple units here, a couple units there. There's not really a science to it. It's just about reading mocks, double checking, making sure what teams need. But beyond that, I mean, he's right. It's not like betting a game on Sunday. But Joe, you have any advice for that?
Yeah, I just did 1-unit bets on the ones I made on today's show with them, both being relatively close to, plus money or even territory, I guess, right? But there's a few longer shots that I did kind of like quarter of a unit on type of thing. Backed in 18-1 to go to the Giants with their first round pick there, 4th overall.
That's not a bad bet there, Joe. I like that one.
I saw that in a few mock drafts. You know, I'm not going to come on here and break down the offensive linemen by any means, but I think a lot of these guys are interchangeable. So yeah, some smaller long shot bets, absolutely.
And Ian, I believe you had a long shot bet for the first round. Did you not mention this off camera?
Yeah, I took Jalen Hurts first round plus 450 to be selected in the first round.
Right.
I don't know.
The CFL draft or NFL?
Yeah. So I only put half a unit on that, but the other ones I'm just putting 1 unit on because I don't have anything else to bet on anyways. So obviously other than Matt and Sims, but yeah, Jalen Hurts first round was my long shot, and now I don't know. Looking back at that pick, I don't know why I did it. It was just like, oh yeah, that could happen. Kind of regretting it in hindsight, but we'll see. Marshall Weiss has a second pick. Second question. This is about a pick it looks like he's interested in. He wants to know Justin Jefferson under 20.5. So Justin Jefferson, obviously the wide receiver from LSU. A lot of mock drafts are having him as the fourth wide receiver to come off the board behind, of course, Ruggs, Judy, and Lamb. So Ninja, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually looked at some Jefferson props for the purpose of this show. The only thing, and I mean, I like it, to be honest, but the only hesitation for me would be just how deep and just how talented this pool of wide receivers is this year. Jefferson is a stud. There's a lot of these guys are going to be really good. Even a guy like Chenault from Colorado. If he's around for the Niners at the back end of the first round, a lot of mocks have him second round now, but I wouldn't be mad if the Niners take a guy like Chenault at the end of the first round. But yeah, the only hesitation for me is just how deep, just how talented this pool of wideouts is. Like, there's a guy with a specific skill set that sort of fits a mold for a lot of these teams that need wide receivers. So it's tough, but I like Jefferson a lot. I do like that bet. I don't know if it's one that I'll make, but yeah, good shout there. I don't know what you think about that, Joe.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I think some of these receivers might drop into the late first and second round. You know, a lot of people just assume that, you know, we're going to see 6, 7, 8 wide receivers go in the first round. Now, there might be some type of crazy run, but a lot of teams are going to be in a position where they're picking for need as opposed to the best player available. So some of these wide receivers might be the best guys available, but they might be in desperate need of an offensive lineman, another position which is very rich in talent in this draft. So I don't know. I could see him sliding a little bit, maybe.
And I'll just hit you with Trevor Loden has a non-football related question, just really quick. Do any of you plan on betting on Asian baseball? I assume not. I'm gonna wait for North American sports to come back. It's what I'm comfortable with. It's what I know. I assume you guys aren't. I mean, Bundesliga is starting. It looks like in a couple of weeks, Ninja. So I know you're going to be all over that, but.
I will be very, very excited. Yeah, so the Bundesliga greenlit potentially for a May 9th return. There are some T's that need to be crossed and some I's that need to be dotted before that gets formally announced. But during this whole crisis, Germany is one of the countries that have handled things pretty well, and they're easing their way back to normalcy. So I haven't ruled that out yet. As for baseball over in Asia, yeah, Taiwan is one of the leagues, I believe, that has been getting some strong action. I have a cousin that lives in Taiwan, and he's been asking if I've been betting on this thing. I have not yet. But if I don't get MLB soon, I'm going to have to potentially look at it. Honestly, like, isn't the Korean League starting up as well, I think? I might have seen that on Twitter. Joe, have you? Joe, you're a massive baseball bettor. Have you?
Yeah, people have asked me if I'm going to get into the Korean League, but from what I know, there's no way to actually handicap it. Like, I want to actually be able to dig into a bunch of stats and stuff like that and learn a little bit about the players and the teams. And I don't even know what the format of these leagues are. Is it they play in divisions and different leagues like Major League Baseball does? So absolutely not, man. It's a gigantic undertaking. If you want to, $5, $10 bets just for some entertainment, sure. But trying to make actual money, I'm not interested. Like I said, I think baseball will be back in June, so I'll wait until then.
If anyone from Fangraphs is watching the program, if we could get a Korean baseball tab on your lovely website, that would be great. Anything else?
Trevor Loden just chimes in. No need to sewer my question there, Ian. I thought it was I didn't mean to sewer your question, man. I'm sorry. I'm just personally
insulting the viewers.
all the power to you, but he does say that there are tons of stats online. So maybe if we find some decent websites that have stats, maybe we'll dig into it, especially if MLB doesn't get started here. So no, that's a good question, Trevor. I didn't mean to sewer you there.
One thing that I believe that I have noticed based on some of the people I follow on Twitter and their tweets from betting on this league is that no lead is safe. A lot of bullpens blowing late leads and things like that. So a lot of high totals, I believe, as well over there in the Taiwan League. But I might be mistaken, but I believe that I've come across some of those tweets.
And I'll just leave you guys with this one just to give you a chance. If you have any other just quick NFL bets that you made off the top of your head that you don't like as much as the first two that you broke down, I mentioned the Jalen Hurts one. I don't actually love that one, but the other one I did, which kind of lines up with Joe's, was Justin Herbert over 5.5, and I got that at like -110. So basically a pick 'em. I think that's. I'm not sold on Justin Herbert for a lot of the reasons Joe talked about with his first pick there. So any other picks that you guys had just to throw out that you don't like necessarily as much as the first two, but that you're on?
Yeah, this one. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
This one's still available at Bet Online. I bet under half of a cat being shown on the NFL broadcast of the draft. And my reasons for this are quite simple. First of all, what percentage of people actually own a cat? Maybe 25, 30% of people. Now, what percentage of those cats will be in the actual room where they're filming the reaction of the player? And what percentage of those cats will be sitting stationary? Cats aren't really stationary, except for maybe if they're sleeping or looking out of a window. So under half a cat is a bet that I enjoy quite a bit.
Well, we have a sample size here locked in, Joe, and it's 33% because of the three of us. Ian is the cat owner here. But yeah, Ian, with your cat capping skills, what do you think of that one?
I'm taking the over on that. That's another bet that I have locked in. Come on, one of the guys got to have a little kitty walking around there.
We haven't seen Ian's cat yet. That's a pretty good test size right there.
She is camera shy. I think she's a little bit more camera shy than most cats. So. No,
but to answer the question there, Ian, I have not. I've literally spent the last 4 or 5 days here prepping for this show and picking those two picks for the purpose of this show that I did bet on. But like I said when I was answering the other question there, come Thursday, I will probably make some studied and potentially a bit more logical than the others. But then there'll be some on draft day where I just fire a bet on something. Just to celebrate the fact that the NFL draft is going to happen, which, by the way, I forget who tweeted it. It might have been Schefter, but there were apparently technical issues on the rehearsal yesterday of the draft. Did I see that right?
Yeah, there was at the very start of the draft. They had some tech issues, but apparently those were rectified. Okay. And it went very smoothly after. So that's why you do a test, I guess, right? So they get those tech issues out of the way. They get the best of the best. Could you imagine being one of the IT guys that they have in all these coaches and GMs' basements across the country? Those guys are going to be under the microscope, man. A lot of heat on those IT professionals. So we salute you guys.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty precarious predicament if there were major tech issues. But you're right, Joe. It's why they get stuff like that out of the way to have those rehearsals like we did yesterday. And Ian watched that footage, came back today with a clean-shaven face and a tidy haircut. So we appreciate that, iMac.
Yep, I washed my hair for the first time in about a week. Trevor Loden, he has a couple last-second picks here. He has Del Pitt over 31.5, -120. He said he got that a few weeks ago. It's shot up since then. And he's on Higgins over 28.5. So he's kind of opposite of me, but there's a small little window there that we can both cash. Like, if the Chiefs take Higgins there at 32, we both cash. So let's hope for that.
What was the Grant Del Pitt one?
Over 31.5, -120.
Interesting. -120. Okay. Yeah, not bad.
Yep. That's all I got as far as in the chat. Yeah. All right. Looks like we had about a 40-minute long show, so it's actually gone pretty long. So,
any parting wisdom, Ian, for the folks at home?
Adopt a cat. A lot of cats out there looking for a home, and everyone needs a little bit of company while they're in quarantine. Adopt a cat. That's my advice.
And Joe, over to you.
Yeah, it's been a unique period here in most people's lives, and you have an opportunity to kind of self-reflect and learn a little bit about yourself, and kind of something that I want to share with the people maybe to relieve some burden in your life is an experience that I've gone through, and that's I bought 10 of the exact same pairs of socks, And it's made my life much easier. So no more mismatched socks, and makes doing laundry much easier. So that's what I would recommend to the viewers out there.
So some differing perspectives there. One, Ian graciously advising to adopt a cat, give a cat a home, give yourself some company, and Joe advising to buy socks in bulk. So take those both with a grain of salt. But look, guys, folks watching at home, we miss doing the show. We miss interacting with you guys throughout the week. So thank you so much for watching. We all hope you are doing safe. Your families are doing well. You're keeping busy, and that everything with each and every one of you has been good during this truly, truly bizarre and unique time. What you're going to want to do is follow Ian on Twitter if you don't already. That's at IanMacOS. And of course, Joe Osborne at JTFOZ, and myself at Chalk_Ninja. One thing before I go, we don't really know yet when sports are coming back. Ian alluded to potentially the German Soccer League, the Bundesliga, coming back in May, but PGA looks like it's aiming for an early June return. UFC is looking like it's going to try and get some cards back. So we will try to do the same sort of production for these events. But I'll put this out to you guys at home. If there's anything out there that you want to see us do a show for, whether it's, I don't even know. But drop anything in the comments below, and we will do what we can to make that work. We love doing the show. We love reaching out to you guys. We love the interaction. We love everything about it. So thank you all so much for watching. Be safe, and we will see you next time on Guys and Bets. Good luck with the NFL Draft.
Woo!